Have you ever been laughed at? Not the gentle teasing of friends, but the cruel public humiliation that burns your cheeks and makes your stomach twist into knots? Have you felt the weight of 1,000 eyes judging you, mocking you, dismissing everything you hold dear? Today's story explores the devastating power of public shame and the even greater power of authentic grace. It asks a question that might change how you see the world. What happens when the person who hurt you most needs your forgiveness to survive? The city streets of Portland hummed with their usual Tuesday afternoon rhythm. Buses hissed to stops, delivery trucks double-parked with hazard lights blinking, and tourists clustered around food carts, selling everything from Korean tacos to artisan donuts. Among this controlled chaos walked a small figure that nobody noticed, until someone decided he was worth noticing for all the wrong reasons. His name was Timothy Brennan, though most people at Riverside Elementary called him Tim. He was 9 years old, thin as a rail, with brown hair that his mother cut herself every few weeks using kitchen scissors and a YouTube tutorial. His jeans were hand-me-downs from his cousin Michael, patched at the knees with fabric that didn't quite match. His sneakers had seen better days, the right sole beginning to separate from the canvas, making a soft flapping sound when he walked too quickly. But none of this bothered Timothy. What mattered to him, what he wore with genuine pride, was his sky-blue t-shirt with a simple black cross printed on the front. His grandmother had given it to him before she passed away last spring, pressing it into his hands with her thin, papery fingers and whispering, "Remember who you are, little one. Remember whose you are." Timothy had been running an errand for his mother, walking 3 blocks from their apartment to the corner pharmacy to pick up her prescription medication. She worked double shifts at the hospital as a nurse's aide, and her feet ached constantly. The medicine helped. Timothy took this responsibility seriously, clutching the $20 bill she'd given him in his pocket, already planning the route that would get him home fastest. He never saw them coming. The 2 young women materialized like a sudden storm. Phones already raised, eyes glittering with the peculiar hunger that comes from having 30,000 followers and needing to feed them fresh content every single day. The one in the black shirt was Vanessa Colton, though her followers knew her as V. Colton, with a username decorated by 3 lightning bolt emojis. She was 23, pretty in the calculated way that comes from understanding angles and lighting, with dark hair that fell in perfect waves. Her companion was her cousin and camera operator, a quieter girl named Nicole, who did whatever Vanessa asked without question. "Oh my goodness, look at this!" Vanessa said, her voice dripping with theatrical surprise. She'd spotted Timothy's shirt from half a block away and had immediately recognized content gold. Religious kid, small, alone. Perfect. Timothy looked up, confused by the sudden attention. The woman was pointing at him, her mouth twisted into something between a smile and a sneer. "Seriously? You're wearing that?" Vanessa's voice pitched higher, loud enough to turn heads on the busy street. "In 2025, you know that's like super problematic, right?" Timothy felt his face grow hot. People were stopping, phones were coming out. Not just Vanessa's phone, but others, passers-by who smelled drama and wanted to capture it for their own accounts. "My grandma gave me this shirt," Timothy said quietly, his hand instinctively moving to touch the cross. "She—" "Oh, of course she did," Vanessa interrupted, laughing. It wasn't a kind laugh. "Let me guess, she also told you that you're going to some magical place in the clouds if you're good enough? That's adorable. Nicole, are you getting this?" Nicole nodded, holding her phone steady, capturing Timothy's reddening face, his confused expression, the way his shoulders hunched as if he could make himself smaller. "Listen, kid, I'm actually doing you a favor here," Vanessa continued, circling him like a predator. Her voice took on a lecturing tone, the voice of someone who considers themselves enlightened, explaining things to the ignorant masses. "That whole belief system? It's about control. It's about making people feel guilty for being human. You seem like a sweet kid. You deserve better than being brainwashed by ancient fairy tales." "They're not fairy tales," Timothy said, and immediately regretted it. His voice came out too small, too uncertain. Vanessa's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. "Oh, honey, yes they are, and the sooner you realize that, the happier you'll be. Trust me." She leaned closer, her phone capturing every angle. "What's your name?" Timothy didn't want to answer, but he'd been raised to be polite even when people weren't polite to him. "Timothy." "Well, Timothy, you're going viral today. Smile for the camera." She made an exaggerated waving gesture, and Nicole laughed along with her. "This is going to be amazing content. My followers are going to love this." Then, as quickly as they'd appeared, they were gone, leaving Timothy standing on the sidewalk with a small crowd still staring at him. Some people looked uncomfortable. A few were smiling. One man shook his head and walked away, muttering something about kids these days. Nobody asked Timothy if he was okay. Nobody offered to help. The crowd dispersed like leaves in wind, everyone returning to their own concerns. Timothy stood there for another moment, feeling something he'd never quite felt before. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was a deeper hurt, a sense that something precious had been handled roughly and dismissed. His grandmother's words echoed in his memory. "Remember who you are. Remember whose you are." He continued to the pharmacy, got his mother's prescription, and walked home. He didn't tell his mother what had happened. She had enough to worry about. By the time Timothy got home, Vanessa's video was already climbing toward 100,000 views. The caption read, "Teaching this kid about reality. Someone had to do it. Sorry, not sorry." 3 lightning bolt emojis, 27 hashtags. The comment section was a war zone. Some people cheered her on, calling her brave for confronting religious indoctrination. Others called her cruel, saying she'd targeted a child. The algorithm, that inscrutable machine that decides what millions of people see, deemed it engaging content. Controversial, emotionally charged, perfect. It fed the video to more and more screens. By midnight, it had 700,000 views. By morning, it had passed 2 million. Vanessa watched the numbers climb with satisfaction. This was what she'd been working toward, grinding out content every single day for 3 years. This was her breakthrough. Brands would come calling now, sponsorships, maybe even a television appearance. She filmed her next video, a behind-the-scenes explanation of her philosophy, doubling down on her position. She was helping kids like Timothy, she explained. She was freeing them from outdated thinking. She was a hero, really, if you thought about it. The comments on that video were equally divided, but division meant engagement. Engagement meant visibility. Visibility meant money. Timothy went to school the next day and found that he was famous in the worst possible way. Kids he'd never spoken to knew his name. Some avoided him, others whispered and pointed. During lunch, someone played the video on their phone, and a group of 7th graders laughed at the same moments Vanessa had laughed. Mrs. Patterson, his teacher, noticed his withdrawn demeanor and asked if everything was okay. Timothy nodded and said nothing. What could he say? That evening, Timothy did something he rarely did. He knelt beside his bed, hands folded, and prayed. Not the rote prayers he sometimes rushed through before sleep, but real prayer, the kind that comes from a bruised heart. "I don't understand why she was so mean," he whispered into the darkness of his small room. "I wasn't hurting anybody. I just want to be good. I want to be like you want me to be, but it's really hard sometimes." He paused, sniffling. "Graham said you love everybody, even people who are mean. I'm trying to believe that. I'm trying to not be mad at her, but I am mad. Is that okay? Can I be mad and still be good?" The room offered no audible answer, but Timothy felt something settle in his chest. Not peace exactly, but the sense that he wasn't alone in the darkness. He climbed into bed and eventually fell asleep, his grandmother's shirt folded carefully on the chair by his window. 3 days after the video went viral, on a Friday evening, Something happened in Portland that nobody expected. The tremor started at 7:43 in the evening. The Cascadia subduction zone, that sleeping giant off the Pacific coast, had been overdue for a major event for decades. Seismologists had warned about it. Engineers had designed buildings to withstand it. Everyone knew it would happen eventually, but knowing and experiencing are different things entirely. The earthquake measured 7.1 on the Richter scale. Not catastrophic, not the big one that everyone feared, but strong enough to crack foundations, shatter windows, and send people running into the streets. Power lines came down. Gas mains ruptured. In the chaos of the first few minutes, 3 apartment buildings in the Pearl District sustained severe damage. One of them partially collapsed. Timothy was at home with his mother when it hit. They rode it out under their kitchen table, his mother holding him tight, both of them silent except for her whispered reassurances. When the shaking stopped, they emerged to find their apartment intact, but the power out. Through the window, they could see smoke rising from somewhere to the south. Sirens began their urgent chorus. "Stay here," his mother said. "Lock the door. I have to go." "Mama." "Timothy, I'm a nurse. People are hurt. I have to help." She was already pulling on her jacket, grabbing her bag. "Lock the door. Don't leave unless you absolutely have to. I'll be back as soon as I can." She kissed his forehead and was gone. Timothy did lock the door. He sat in the growing darkness of their apartment, listening to sirens, listening to people shouting in the street, listening to his own heartbeat. The refrigerator was silent. The TV was dark. His phone had battery, but the cellular network was overwhelmed. After an hour of sitting, Timothy couldn't stand it anymore. His mother had told him to stay, but she'd also taught him to help when people needed help. He could hear crying in the hallway. He could hear someone calling for assistance. He unlocked the door and stepped out. The apartment complex was in chaos. Emergency lights flickered. An elderly man from the 3rd floor was sitting on the stairs, holding his wrist at an odd angle. Mrs. Chen, from down the hall, was trying to calm her crying baby. The building manager was nowhere to be seen. "Are you okay, Mr. Davies?" Timothy asked the elderly man. "Think I broke my wrist, son. Fell when the shaking started." "I'll find help," Timothy promised. He went from door to door, checking on people. At 9 years old, he couldn't do much, but he could fetch water for people from the emergency supply in the basement. He could hold crying children while their parents secured damaged furniture. He could run messages between floors when phones didn't work. He could shine his small flashlight so Mrs. Chen could see to change her baby's diaper. At some point, Timothy left the building entirely. The street was full of people, dazed and frightened. A woman was sitting on the curb, blood running down her face from a cut on her forehead. Nobody was helping her. Everyone was too focused on their own emergencies. Timothy approached her carefully. "Mom, are you hurt?" She looked at him with unfocused eyes. "I think so. I can't think straight." "You're bleeding. We need to stop the bleeding." Timothy remembered something his mother had taught him. He pulled off his grandmother's shirt, revealing a plain white undershirt beneath, and pressed the blue fabric gently against the woman's forehead. "Hold this here. Keep pressure on it. Someone will come help soon." The woman's eyes focused on him. You're just a child. Where's your mother?" "She's helping people. I can help too." Throughout that long night, Timothy Brennan, 9 years old, moved through the chaos with a determination that belied his size. He helped 3 firefighters clear debris from a storefront entrance. He held the hand of a terrified 6-year-old girl while her father searched for her missing mother. He shared the granola bars from his backpack with people who were hungry and scared. When someone needed to get a message to the emergency shelter 3 blocks away, Timothy volunteered to run it. At 2 in the morning, exhausted and filthy, he finally returned to his own apartment. His mother was there, having finished her shift at the emergency hospital site. When she saw him, she burst into tears. "I told you to stay inside," she said, pulling him into a fierce hug. "I know, Mama. But people needed help. She couldn't be angry. She understood what had driven him. It was the same thing that had driven her. What Timothy didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that someone had been filming. Multiple someones, actually. In the age of smartphones, tragedy is always documented. Among the dozens of people recording the earthquake aftermath, at least 7 had captured footage of a small boy in a white undershirt and blue jeans, wearing battered sneakers with a flapping sole, helping wherever help was needed. One video showed him carefully guiding an elderly woman away from a damaged building. Another caught him sharing his food with strangers. The clearest one, filmed by a local news stringer, showed Timothy pressing his grandmother's shirt against a woman's bleeding forehead, his young face serious and focused. That clip, in particular, resonated. The news stringer posted it to social media with a simple caption, "Heroes come in all sizes. This kid is something special." By Saturday afternoon, as Portland began the long process of cleanup and recovery, Timothy's second video appearance was spreading across the internet. But this time the tone was different. This time, people weren't mocking. "Is that the same kid from V. Colton's video?" "Oh my gosh, it is. The one she was making fun of? He was out there helping people while everyone else was panicking. Look at his shirt. He gave someone his shirt for their injury. Wasn't that the shirt with the cross? The one she mocked him for wearing?" The connection spread like wildfire. Internet sleuths, those amateur detectives who live for this kind of revelation, quickly confirmed that yes, the small boy helping earthquake victims was the same child that Vanessa Colton had publicly humiliated 3 days earlier. The same kid she'd called brainwashed, the same kid she'd dismissed as believing in fairy tales. The backlash was immediate and merciless. Vanessa woke up Saturday morning to find her notifications exploding. But instead of the usual mix of praise and criticism, it was almost universally negative. People were posting side-by-side comparisons of her video and the earthquake footage. They were pointing out the dates. They were noting the cross shirt. They were drawing a very clear conclusion. She had mocked a child for his faith, and that same child had then demonstrated more courage and compassion than most adults ever would. You should be ashamed of yourself. This kid has more character in his little finger than you have in your entire body. How does it feel knowing you bullied a hero? Delete your account. You owe him an apology. No, she owes him more than an apology. She owes him her respect. The comments multiplied. Thousands became tens of thousands, became hundreds of thousands. Vanessa's follow account, which had been climbing steadily, suddenly reversed direction. She was losing thousands of followers per hour. Brands that had been in preliminary sponsorship discussions ghosted her. A podcast that had invited her to appear quietly cancelled. Vanessa tried to ride it out at first. She posted a defiant video explaining that she stood by her principles, that she'd been trying to help Timothy by freeing him from dogmatic thinking. The response was brutal. Helping him? You humiliated him. He was helping actual people in danger while you were trying to get likes. This isn't about principles. This is about you being cruel to a child. Her cousin Nicole called her, voice shaking. "Vanessa, you need to apologize. This is getting out of control." "I didn't do anything wrong," Vanessa insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. She'd watched the earthquake footage. She'd seen Timothy's face so young and serious as he helped people who needed help. She'd seen him give away his shirt, the shirt she'd mocked, to someone who was bleeding and scared. Something twisted in her chest. It felt uncomfortably like shame. By Sunday, the story had reached mainstream news. Local Portland stations ran features on the earthquake hero, and his identity was confirmed. Timothy Brennan, 9 years old, student at Riverside Elementary, son of a nurse's aide. News crews camped outside his apartment building, hoping for an interview. His principal released a statement praising his character. The mayor mentioned him in a press conference about earthquake response. And through it all, the question hung in the air. What would Timothy say about the woman who had mocked him? The interview happened on Monday. A local news anchor, a kind woman named Diane Preston, was granted exclusive access to speak with Timothy and his mother. The interview was conducted in their small apartment, and Diane approached it with appropriate sensitivity. "Timothy, you've had quite a week," Diane began gently. "A video of you being confronted on the street went viral. Then just days later, footage of you helping during the earthquake also went viral. How are you feeling about all of this?" Timothy fidgeted with his hands. He was wearing his grandmother's shirt again, freshly washed. The bloodstains faded, but not entirely gone. "It's been weird," he admitted. "I don't like all the attention." "I understand. Can I ask you about the first video? The one where someone criticized your shirt?" Timothy's face reddened slightly, but he nodded. "How did that make you feel?" "It made me sad," Timothy said quietly, "and embarrassed and confused. I didn't understand why she was so angry about my shirt. It was a gift from my grandma before she died. It's special to me." "I'm sorry that happened to you, Timothy. That must have been very difficult." "Yeah. And then, just a few days later, you were out helping people during the earthquake. Your mother told me she'd asked you to stay inside, but you went out anyway. Why did you do that?" Timothy considered the question seriously. "Because people needed help. My mama always says that when you can help someone, you should. She's a nurse. She helps people every day. I just did what I thought I should do. That takes a lot of courage, especially for someone your age." "I was pretty scared," Timothy admitted. "But being scared and being brave at the same time is okay. My grandma told me that. She said brave people feel scared too. They just help anyway." Diane smiled warmly. "Your grandmother sounds like she was a very wise woman." "She was." "Timothy, I have to ask. The woman who made the first video, Vanessa Colton, has received a lot of criticism over the past few days. People are very angry with her. How do you feel about her now?" The room went quiet. This was the question everyone wanted answered. This was the moment that would define the narrative. Timothy looked at his hands, at the cross on his shirt, then up at Diane. "I don't think she's a bad person," he said slowly. I think she just didn't understand. Maybe nobody ever told her that being different is okay, that believing in things is okay." "You're not angry with her?" "I was angry at first, really angry, but—" He paused, trying to find the right words for something he felt, but didn't entirely understand. "But being angry all the time is really heavy. It makes your chest feel tight. I don't want to carry that around. My grandma used to say that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to get sick." "That's very wise. I just wish she hadn't been so mean, but I forgive her. If she wants to be forgiven, I forgive her." The interview continued for a few more minutes, but that moment, that simple, genuine statement of forgiveness from a 9-year-old boy to the woman who had publicly humiliated him, that was what resonated. The clip of Timothy saying, "I forgive her," spread even faster than the original videos. People wept watching it. Grown men and women, hardened by years of internet cynicism, found themselves moved by the simple grace of a child who chose forgiveness over revenge. The comment sections transformed from places of anger to places of reflection. "We don't deserve this kid. He's teaching all of us a lesson. This is what actual goodness looks like. How can a 9-year-old have more wisdom than most adults?" But the comments that mattered most were the ones directed at Vanessa. "He forgave you. You should be grateful. A child is showing you more grace than you showed him. You don't deserve his forgiveness, but he gave it anyway. Learn from this. If you have any decency at all, you'll respond to this." Vanessa watched the interview alone in her apartment. She'd been avoiding social media for the past 24 hours, unable to face the continuing onslaught. But she couldn't avoid this. Everyone was sending it to her. The clip was everywhere. She watched Timothy's face as he spoke about forgiveness. She watched him touch the cross on his shirt, the shirt she'd mocked. She watched him choose kindness when he had every right to choose cruelty. and something inside Vanessa Colton, something that had been carefully walled off for years, finally cracked open. She cried. Not the pretty crying of someone aware they're being watched, but the ugly, painful crying of someone confronting their own failures. She cried for the kid she'd hurt. She cried for the person she'd become, someone who would hurt a kid for content. She cried for every moment of her life when she'd chosen popularity over principles, engagement over empathy. When the tears finally stopped, Vanessa did something she'd never done before. She sat down and wrote an apology with no thought of how it would play online, no calculation of damage control, no concern for her brand. She just wrote what she felt. The video she posted was different from anything she'd ever shared. No fancy editing, no makeup, no clever caption. Just her, sitting in her apartment looking exhausted and real. "Hi everyone, Vanessa here. I need to talk about something serious. And I need you to listen without interrupting, even though I know you can't actually interrupt a video." She attempted a weak smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You've all seen the videos. You know what I did. I saw a kid wearing a cross shirt, and I decided that was content worth capturing. I decided that his beliefs were something I could mock for views. I was cruel to a child because I thought it would make me more popular." She paused, collecting herself. "I watched Timothy's interview. I heard him say he forgives me. And honestly, that made it worse. Because I don't know if I would have forgiven someone who did to me what I did to him. This 9-year-old kid, who I humiliated in front of millions of people, has more grace and character than I can even comprehend." Vanessa looked directly at the camera. "Timothy, if you're watching this, I am so sorry. You deserve better. You deserved respect. You deserved kindness. Instead, I gave you mockery and cruelty, and I did it because I thought it would help my career. There's no excuse for that. None." She took a breath. "I don't expect anyone to forgive me as easily as Timothy did. I don't expect to recover my followers or my opportunities. Honestly, I don't deserve to. What I hope is that maybe I can learn something from this. Maybe I can become a better person. Maybe I can figure out how to be more like that kid who helped people during an earthquake, instead of the person who makes fun of kids on the street." The video ended. No call to action, no request for engagement. Just a simple, genuine apology. The response was mixed. Some people applauded her honesty. Others said it was too little, too late. Some accused her of only apologizing to salvage her career. Others noted that she'd disabled comments and monetization on the video, suggesting she was at least trying to do this right. But the person whose response mattered most hadn't seen it yet. Timothy watched Vanessa's apology video at home with his mother. Someone from the news station had sent it to them, asking for a statement. His mother watched Timothy's face carefully, ready to turn it off if it upset him. When it ended, Timothy was quiet for a long moment. "What do you think, baby?" his mother asked gently. "I think she means it," Timothy said. "I think she's really sorry." "How can you tell?" "She looks sad, really sad, not like she's pretending." He looked up at his mother. "Do you think I should talk to her?" His mother considered this carefully. "That's up to you, Timothy. You don't owe her anything. You've already forgiven her. That's more than generous. But maybe she needs to hear it, not from a video. Like, actually hear it. You're a good kid, you know that. I'm trying to be." The meeting was arranged through the news station as a neutral party. Timothy's mother insisted on being present, and Vanessa agreed without hesitation. They met in a small conference room at the station, with only Diane Preston present as a mediator. Vanessa arrived first, nervous and fidgeting. She dressed simply, no thought given to how she looked on camera. When Timothy walked in with his mother, Vanessa stood up so quickly she nearly knocked over her chair. "Timothy," she said, then seemed to lose her words. Timothy looked at her with those serious young eyes. Then he held out his hand. "Hi," he said simply. Vanessa stared at his hand for a moment, then knelt down so she was at his eye level. "Hi, Timothy, I need you to know how sorry I am. What I did was wrong. It was cruel. You didn't deserve that. I know, Timothy said. I saw your video. I meant every word. I know that too. How? Vanessa asked, genuinely curious. How do you know? Because you look like how I felt when I accidentally killed my friend's goldfish. Really, really sorry and wishing you could fix it, but you can't. Despite the tension in the room, Vanessa laughed, a real laugh, the first in days. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how I feel. Timothy studied her for a moment. Can I ask you something? Anything. Oh, why did you say those things? About my shirt? About my grandma? Vanessa felt her throat tighten. Because I was so focused on getting attention that I forgot that real people have real feelings. Because I was more worried about being popular than being good. Because I never learned what you somehow already know. That kindness matters more than being right. That people matter more than likes and views. Oh, Timothy said. He thought about this. That sounds lonely. It was. It is. You don't have to be lonely, Timothy said, with the simple certainty of childhood. You can just decide to be different. Is it really that simple? My grandma said the first step is always the hardest. But you already did that. You said sorry. That's the first step. Vanessa felt tears building. You're pretty smart for 9 years old. My grandma was smart. She taught me stuff. She must have been an incredible person. She was. Timothy touched his shirt. This was hers. Well, she gave it to me. She said it would remind me who I'm supposed to be. And who's that? Kind, brave, someone who helps. He paused. Someone who forgives. I don't think I deserve your forgiveness, Timothy. That's kind of the whole point of forgiveness, Timothy said, with the unconscious wisdom that sometimes comes from children. If you deserved it, it wouldn't mean anything. Forgiveness is for when people mess up. Everybody messes up. Vanessa looked at this small boy with his patched jeans and worn sneakers and cross-emblazoned shirt, and she understood something she'd never fully grasped before. She'd spent years building a platform, cultivating an image, chasing an idea of success that was hollow at its core. And here was a child who had nothing she'd been chasing, no fame, no wealth, no influence. And yet he possessed something infinitely more valuable. He had character, he had compassion. He had the kind of strength that came from believing in something bigger than himself. Thank you, Timothy, Vanessa said quietly. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for teaching me something I should have learned a long time ago. You're welcome, Timothy said. Then, with the forthright nature of children, he added, Can I go now? My friend Marcus is waiting for me to play basketball. Everyone in the room laughed, the tension finally breaking. Of course, Vanessa said. Go play basketball. As Timothy and his mother left, Timothy turned back at the door. Miss Colton? Yes? I hope you feel better now. Being mad and sad all the time is really heavy. I hope you can put it down. He waved and was gone. Vanessa stood in the conference room crying again, but this time the tears felt different, cleaner somehow, like washing away something toxic that had been building up for years. The story could have ended there. In fact, for most people, it did. The news cycle moved on, as news cycles do. Other stories captured public attention. Timothy returned to his normal life, though people sometimes recognized him at the grocery store or the park. His mother framed a letter from the mayor commending his bravery. His teacher gave him a special mention at the school assembly. Life continued, but for Vanessa, the story was just beginning. She didn't return to content creation, not in the way she'd done it before. She took down most of her old videos, leaving only the apology and a simple bio. Learning to be better. She enrolled in volunteer training at a local community center. She started spending her afternoons reading to elderly residents at a nursing home, people who reminded her of Timothy's grandmother. She got a job at a bookstore, delighting in the anonymity of it, in being just another person who loved books, rather than someone constantly performing for an audience. On the first anniversary of the earthquake, Vanessa attended a memorial service for the victims. It was small and quiet, held in a community park that had been damaged and then rebuilt. She stood in the back, not wanting to intrude. She saw Timothy there with his mother, placing flowers at the memorial. He looked a bit taller than he had a year ago, his face a bit more mature, but he was still wearing that blue shirt with the cross. He saw her and waved. Vanessa waved back, her heart full of something she couldn't quite name. Gratitude, maybe, or hope, or just the simple peace that comes from knowing you're on a better path than the one you'd been traveling. After the ceremony, Timothy walked over to her. "Hi, Miss Colton." "Hi, Timothy. How are you?" "Pretty good. How are you?" "Better. A lot better, actually." "That's good." He smiled. "I saw your video about the reading program at the nursing home. That was nice." "You still follow me?" Vanessa was surprised. After everything, she'd assumed he'd want nothing to do with her online presence. "My mama showed me. She said you were doing good things now." "I'm trying. I have a good example to follow." Timothy blushed. "I just did what my grandma taught me." "Then your grandma is still teaching people, even though she's gone, through you, and now through me." Vanessa crouched down to his level. "I wanted to thank you, Timothy. Not just for forgiving me, but for showing me what really matters. You changed my life. You probably changed a lot of people's lives." "I just tried to help," Timothy said, slightly uncomfortable with the praise. "That's what you're supposed to do, right? Help when people need it?" "Right. But not everyone does. You did. You still do. So do you now," Timothy pointed out. "Yeah, I guess I do." They stood there for a moment, an unlikely pair united by a strange sequence of events that had begun with cruelty and ended with redemption. Around them, the park filled with spring sunshine, and people milled about talking quietly, remembering and healing. "I gotta go," Timothy said. "Mama's calling me." "Okay. Take care, Timothy." "You too, Miss Colton." He started to walk away, then turned back. "Hey, Miss Colton." "Yes?" "I'm glad you're doing better. I'm glad you're happy now." "Me too, Timothy. Me too." He grinned and ran off to join his mother. Vanessa watched him go. This small boy who had somehow possessed the strength to forgive when he'd had every right to hold a grudge. She thought about the person she'd been a year ago, so focused on metrics and engagement that she'd forgotten basic human decency. She thought about the person she was becoming, someone who actually cared about making a positive difference, rather than just appearing to care for the camera. That evening, Vanessa posted one final video. Not on her old account, she'd left that behind, but on a small personal account with only a few hundred followers who'd stuck with her through her transformation. "I wanted to share something I learned this year," she said to the camera. "I learned that grace is not earned. It's given. I learned that forgiveness can come from the most unexpected places. I learned that a child can teach you more about character in 5 minutes than you'll learn in a lifetime of chasing fame." She paused, collecting her thoughts. "A year ago, I was so focused on being seen that I forgot how to actually see other people. I forgot that everyone has a story. Everyone has something valuable to offer. Everyone deserves respect and kindness, even if, especially if, they believe differently than you do. I hurt someone this year, a kid named Timothy who was just living his life, wearing a shirt his grandmother gave him, and I turned him into content. I made him into a punchline. And when I was at my lowest, when the world was rightfully angry at me, he forgave me. He taught me about grace. So this is me saying thank you, Timothy, one more time. Thank you for being brave enough to forgive. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. And to everyone watching, be more like Timothy. Choose kindness. Choose forgiveness. Choose to see people as people, not as content, not as engagement, not as a means to an end. That's all. That's the lesson. It's simple, but I'm still learning it every day. We could all stand to learn it. She ended the video and set down her phone. Outside her window, Portland continued its evening rhythm. People walked dogs, children played in yards. The city that had been shaken and hurt and rebuilt continued to live. Vanessa smiled. For the first time in years, she felt genuinely at peace. In a small apartment across town, Timothy Brennan finished his homework and got ready for bed. He carefully folded his grandmother's shirt and placed it on the chair by his window, just like he did every night. The cross on the front was faded now, and the blood stains from the earthquake had never completely washed out, but that was okay. The shirt had done its job. It had reminded him who he was and whose he was. It had helped someone who was bleeding and scared. It had become part of a story much bigger than itself. Timothy knelt beside his bed for his evening prayer. "Thank you for today," he whispered. "Thank you for Mama and school and Marcus and basketball. Thank you for Miss Colton getting better. I think she's a nice person now. I think she just forgot for a while, but she remembered. Thank you for helping her remember." He paused, thinking. "Graham, if you can hear me, I'm still trying to be good like you taught me. I'm trying to be kind and brave and helpful. I hope I'm doing okay. I hope you're proud." He climbed into bed and fell asleep almost immediately, his face peaceful in the moonlight that filtered through the window. In that moment, if you'd looked at him, you'd have seen just a small boy sleeping in a small room in a small apartment. You'd have seen patched jeans hanging over a chair, worn sneakers by the door, homework papers scattered on a desk. You'd have seen the ordinary life of an ordinary child, but ordinary lives lived with grace and courage and kindness have a way of becoming extraordinary. They have a way of changing the world, one person at a time, one choice at a time, one act of forgiveness at a time. The story of Timothy Brennan and Vanessa Colton spread far beyond Portland. It was shared in sermons and classrooms. It was referenced in articles about cyberbullying and the power of forgiveness. It became a touchstone, a reminder that in a world that often rewards cruelty and cynicism, kindness and grace still matter. They still have power. They still change lives. Years later, when Timothy was no longer a small boy, but a young man about to graduate from high school, a reporter would track him down and ask him about that week that changed everything. "Do you ever regret forgiving her?" the reporter would ask. Timothy, now 17 and tall, and still wearing a cross, this one on a simple chain around his neck, would think about the question seriously before answering. "No," he'd say finally. "Forgiveness isn't about the other person deserving it. It's about you deciding not to carry around anger and hurt for the rest of your life. Miss Colton was mean to me for like 5 minutes. Should I let that 5 minutes define years of my life? That seems like a waste. Do you still talk to her?" "Sometimes. She sends me a card on my birthday every year. She volunteers at a lot of the same places my mama does. She's good people now. Or maybe she always was, and she just got lost for a while. I don't know. Either way, she found her way back. What do you think people should learn from your story?" Timothy would smile, that same serious, thoughtful smile he'd had as a child. That everybody messes up. Everybody has moments where they're not their best self. But those moments don't have to define you. You can choose to be better. You can choose to forgive. You can choose kindness. It's always a choice. That's very wise. My grandma taught me that. She's the one who was really wise. I'm just trying to remember what she said, but that conversation was years in the future. On this particular night, in this particular moment, Timothy Brennan was just a 9-year-old boy sleeping peacefully, his grandmother's shirt folded carefully by his window, ready for another day of simply being good. And in another apartment, a young woman who had once been cruel was learning how to be kind. And the world, in its small and incremental way, was a slightly better place because of both of them. The choice to forgive had rippled outward like water from a thrown stone, touching lives in ways that neither Timothy nor Vanessa could fully comprehend. Teachers showed the videos to their students, sparking conversations about empathy and social media responsibility. Parents used the story to talk to their children about standing up for their beliefs, while also showing grace to those who disagree. Therapists referenced it in sessions about letting go of anger and resentment. The cross shirt, faded and stained and beloved, hung in Timothy's closet, a reminder of a week that had changed everything, a reminder of his grandmother's wisdom, a reminder that small acts of courage and kindness matter more than we often realize. And somewhere in the vast digital archive of the internet, two videos existed side by side, one showing a small boy being mocked for his faith, and another showing that same boy choosing grace over grievance, forgiveness over fury, love over hatred. Between those two moments, between cruelty and kindness, between hurt and healing, lay the entire scope of human possibility. The choice we all face every single day. The choice that defines not just our stories, but who we become. Timothy had chosen well. So had Vanessa in the end. And their story, born from pain but ending in peace, would continue to inspire long after the news crews moved on and the hashtags faded. Because some stories aren't just about what happened. They're about what's possible when we choose to be our better selves, when we choose to be the person the cross represents, when we choose to be the person grandmother's wisdom called us to become, when we choose simply to be good. The moon continued its slow arc across the Portland sky. The city slept and dreamed, and in a small apartment, a small boy rested, his day done, his conscience clear, his heart at peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to choose kindness over cruelty, grace over grievance. But tonight, in this moment, all was well, all was forgiven, all was as it should be.